Thanks for tuning in to our seller interview series. Up today, we've got an Amazon FBA and e-commerce business for sale in the home niche. Created in September 2001, this business makes an average of $4,077 per month in net profit, and the listing number for this business is 46567. Now, we do these interviews to give potential buyers more information about both the seller and the asset they're looking to purchase. We hope these insights are helpful for you in making a buying decision. We've got the seller with us today to go through the business and cover everything from niche selection to traffic and monetization. Thanks for coming on, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you back. So before we get started, I'm going to go over a quick summary of the business. This business was built in September 2001. This business has average monthly revenue of $15,526 and is producing an average net profit of $4,077, and that's based on a 5-month average. Included in the sale of the business are Amazon Seller Central Account and 3 SKUs, primary domain and all site content and files, 3 additional domains, social media accounts, and SOPs in a video format. All right, now that we've got all the details out of the way, let's get started on the interview. So start me off. Can you tell me a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Sure. So I actually had a problem many years ago in the 90s where I invented a product to help me solve that problem. And so this business basically sells that solution. It's quite unique. And yeah, it's had some highs and some lows. And yeah, it's been a really interesting 20 years. But yeah, it's time to probably pass over the baton to someone new.
Okay. Well, I want to dig into that a little bit more. So tell me about your kind of idea to start this. And I understand the business has got a long history. So can you walk me through that a little bit?
Sure. So the business was actually started way before Amazon was even on the radar. So I became quite good at search engine optimization and Google. It was quite easy in the early 2000s. And so the website was ranking very well. And my primary income for the business was just effectively through e-commerce and website sales. And that is still an important channel for the business. In 2013, I decided to redesign the product and the main product, the hero product. And that then resulted in a Kickstarter project, which raised about 110,000 US to validate that the idea and the new design was going to be effective, which it did. So it wasn't long after that Amazon was definitely on the radar. So that was just after that, around about 2014, I think, was when I started selling on Amazon itself. And so it's now become a multi-channel type business. So we've got Amazon in the US, Canada, UK, France, and most of Europe. I've experimented in Australia without much success, like most people that try and sell on Amazon Australia. And I've also experimented in Japan as well with limited success. But I do have those Amazon seller accounts sitting there available. Over the years as well, the business has built, what am I looking at here? An email list of around about 6,500 previous customers and people from the website that have signed up to hear more from the business. So the foundation's really strong for this little business, yeah.
Okay. Well, and this may seem a little bit like an obvious question. You've touched on it in some ways, but, I understand you've got kind of a multi-channel approach with this business. So can you walk me through how this business primarily makes money?
Sure. So obviously by selling products on Amazon and through the website itself. So the way that I've structured particularly on the e-commerce side, if I could touch on that first.
Yeah.
So what I've done is I've been able to find a company in Hong Kong, and soon we'll be moving to the same company that's set up in Shenzhen, which is a fulfillment house, so a 3PL. So they're kind of like FBA for e-commerce. So I get my products made in China, and then we send those products either into Hong Kong to the fulfillment center in Hong Kong for website orders only, or indeed soon into Shenzhen. So what that means is that you don't touch any inventory. It's kind of like, the cash flow is quite quick on e-commerce as well, because when you manufacture a product in China, you're not waiting months and months or weeks and weeks for it to arrive at a warehouse. It's literally from the manufacturer to, my fulfillment center in Hong Kong, literally within one day. So you can be doing some pretty interesting just-in-time inventory management and delivery, yeah. So that's the e-commerce side. And then the Amazon side, it's just optimizing the listings and, just having a bit of PPC. I don't spend too much on the Amazon advertising, don't need to. And the brand is quite well known. So there's quite a lot of brand search. So most people come through are quite cheap keywords related to the brand. And that tends to keep the ACOS quite reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great answer. Moving forward from, the business and wanting to know a little bit more about this personal side, tell me a little bit about why you're selling the business instead of keeping it and growing it.
That's a really good question. So, the primary reason is that the business and me as a director of the business actually got the business in a bit of trouble with the tax department in April of last year. And what that's meant, there's been an issue with cash flow. And what that's meant is, and I'm sure most of the buyers would have seen a decline in the business. Some of the products that I would like to reorder, I don't have enough money to do that. So it means that we're not selling as many products and therefore the revenue has declined. So I'm hoping that a new buyer can come in with a little bit of extra capital and be able to bring back some of the other products that are currently not included in the sale but are sitting there. I'm looking at them right now, some of the prototypes and also some of the production products, and build the business back up to where it should be, which is making a lot more money. So that's the main reason, is it just through my own. And also there was a little bit of my bookkeeper. I won't get into too much of the detail, but other than to say I took my eye off the ball on tax, and now the company's been facing a reasonable cash flow issue because of that.
Okay. Well, you might be leading me to some of my next questions here, but I'll go ahead and ask them anyway. It sounds like there were some lessons learned throughout building this business. So, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the kind of things that you would learn that you would apply to future sites or businesses, or the things that you learned that actually just seem to really work in the process of building this business.
Yeah, so I think the things that definitely work is when you create something that's very unique and very differentiated, whether that's for website sales or for Amazon itself. It's just super important not to have a Me Too type brand on Amazon where you've really just got like a logo that you've slapped on a standard product that you might have sourced off Alibaba. This is not that sort of product. It's actually a very, very unique product. And there's really only a handful of indirect competitors. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's really big, in my view, particularly around e-commerce and even on Amazon, is around keywords and keyword optimization and understanding how people actually find your products, what keywords they use to find your products, and make sure that your products rank for those keywords from an SEO perspective, which our company does, or the business does, the website does, and also on Amazon as well. So they're probably the two big, most important sort of aspects of having something uniquely differentiated from a product perspective that's very easy visually to see in a main image together, and marrying that up with search terms that are closely related to what the product is and the problem that people are looking for a product to solve.
Absolutely. I'm curious. I feel like you've got, you and I have spoken before and you have quite a bit of FBA experience. I'm wondering for listeners out there who are currently in the FBA space and they're looking to stay relevant and stay future proof in FBA. Do you have any advice on that, or anything that people could be implementing in their businesses now to sort of make sure they're set up for the future?
Sure. I think, IP protection is super important. So, having a trademark so that actually sort of protects you from potential copycats, understanding, I mean, selling on Amazon it can be quite a complicated business because there's a lot of input, particularly from, seller support or small issues that, pop up from time to time with Amazon. So it's just being across the detail and, really sort of understanding your inventory and how long it's going to take to get that inventory from wherever it's manufactured into an Amazon warehouse. So lead times are super important. Profitability is really important. This is a very profitable product. So, without sort of taking returns into account, the actual margin is around about 28 US, I think, at the moment. So, definitely having that margin, the return on investment as a percentage is really important. So there's just lots and lots of moving parts, that you've got to watch out for if you're setting up from scratch. So hopefully this business as a reasonable turnkey business that just needs a little bit of extra capital invested back into it, is a perfect springboard for somebody to acquire.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Well, so you might have touched on this in some way, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you just in case you have anything else you want to share. I wanted to get into challenges and overcoming them. So, what is I would say, your biggest challenge while running this business, and how did you overcome it?
Really good question. So probably, I think it's more to do with the actual running of the business and less to do with the running of the Amazon seller account. So I probably touched on the fact that, I had an issue with a bookkeeper that was causing all sorts of problems and I let them go too far. And that sort of probably just being too nice. And that's ended up putting the company in the position that it's in at the moment. So yeah, just staying across the detail and making sure you've got a really, really good team working for you. So that's probably the main sort of lessons that I've learned over the last 12 months. And prior to that, the business was ticking along really well. So yeah, they're probably the main lessons, I think. Certainly won't be making those same mistakes again in 2020 this year.
Okay. I think that's really great advice. Is there anything that you would tell yourself in particular, back in 2001 when you were getting started that you kind of wish you knew?
What would I tell myself now? Gosh, not really. I mean, I think it's just a matter of just adapting to the changing e-commerce landscape. And I guess the big thing for me was really learning that to create a location independent business, which this is a really important thing because that actually gives you freedom. And that's the most important thing about running a business like this is it enables you to be free and not to have to work for somebody else and sell your time. So the three sort of principles that I like to work on is to stop selling time, to have a location independent business, and one that's also scalable. And this business sort of ticks all those three boxes, or it has in the past. Yeah, absolutely. So they're the sort of things that I wish I'd sort of strive for a bit earlier getting started, because for a lot of the first sort of 10 years of the business, I was actually doing a lot of the fulfillment myself. I was going down to post offices and shipping orders all over the world. And yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Certainly has changed now with FBA, hasn't it?
Yeah, it
Taking that
has
out for
indeed.
you.
Well, I've tried to create FBA, sort of an FBA system as well, a global FBA system for the e-commerce side of things as well. So that's all ready to go.
Yeah.
And there just isn't really any handling of any stock at all, apart from when you might be developing a sort of a new version of something, and you might end up with a production sample or two in your house. That's about it. You're really just checking samples and making sure the quality is okay. And yeah, it's a really great little biz.
Yeah, well, you certainly live in the dream. I know for a lot of people listening, they're all striving for that location independence and not trading their time, which you've been able to achieve. So that's pretty incredible. And congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess making sure we don't get too far from the business at hand, tell me a little bit about where the majority of your traffic is coming from and what you're currently doing in terms of marketing.
Sure. So the majority of the traffic is actually coming from SEO. So just organic Google rankings. So it's quite cheap. The rankings are very stable in SEO in spite of the fact that there's been a lot of Google updates. So this is just on the e-commerce side. And then we also use Google AdWords as well. So that's $300 to $400 a month in Google ads, sometimes a bit less, sometimes higher, depending on the season. It's not a particularly seasonal business, although it does drop off in summer. So if anybody out there is really good with, say, Facebook advertising, this product is absolutely geared for Facebook, and it's not something I've ever really got into. So if you've got a bit of experience with Facebook, I think this product could do really, really well for you. And then from the Amazon perspective, I don't really drive much outside in traffic to the Amazon listings itself. It's mainly just using a bit of PPC and also just organic rankings on Amazon itself for the main keywords for the product. So they're really the main sort of traffic driving, tactics that I use.
Okay. If you were to keep this business, what are some ways you would try to grow it?
Well, if I was to keep it and I had a bit more money, then I'd definitely be bringing back some of the quite good and successful products that I developed over the last few years that sort of really just run off the back of the main product. And then I'd probably also look to, or just to include some new updates to the current product as well. So I'd like to I've always sort of had every year or so, I've tried to release like another version or a next generation of the original product. Sort of started out on Kickstarter. So I think we're up to about generation 6 now. So I'd love to incorporate some ideas that I have for the product in terms of improvements from customer feedback, that sort of thing, into the products for 2020 into, say, a generation 7 version. So I'm hoping to work with a new buyer to talk to some of those ideas and see if we can get some of those things happening.
Okay, Generation 7, that sounds exciting. A little less exciting for this one, but what do you think are the biggest risks with the business that a buyer should be aware of?
Probably kind of copycats. One of the things that a business doesn't have are patents. So it did have a provisional patent for a year or so during the Kickstarter campaign, but the business never really, I always felt that it was better to try and, create extra generations and stay ahead of any sort of copycats, but we never really had any. So I haven't been too worried about it. So that's probably the biggest risk. I mean, I've sort of mitigated risk I've got trademarks in China to prevent people from potentially kind of stopping me from exporting my products out of China. That's a real, if you talk to Microsoft or Google or Apple, there's dozens of companies that have fallen foul of not having a trademark in China. So we've got trademarks in the US and also in Australia as well. So we're reasonably protected. We've got lots of domain names. It's a pretty well protected business, just apart from the IP aspect of the main products.
All right. Earlier you were mentioning that this business is pretty passive, but can you describe the amount and type of work you're currently doing on the business for maintenance?
Actually, right now is a really interesting time because it's a little bit busy, mainly because we're swapping fulfillment houses in Hong Kong from Hong Kong to Shenzhen. So we've actually stopped selling. So January's numbers aren't going to be great And that's mainly because we've stopped selling the website altogether while we're in that transition of moving warehouses. We got caught up in without giving too much away, we weren't able to import into Hong Kong anymore with some of the products because of the protests there. I know it sounds really weird, but there were bans on certain types of products in Hong Kong during the protests. And so we found that our products were being stopped at the border and they wouldn't let them in. So that's been a bit of a scramble to go sort of mainland China for our e-commerce. And then just a little bit of customer service. So there's, because we're e-commerce, we tend to get a little bit more input from customer emails and inquiries, particularly about, does a product do this? Does it do that? With this, can you use it with that? So there's a little bit there. Now, I could handle that myself, but I do have an assistant called Paula who helps me with that. She's a stay-at-home mum with an autistic boy, so I support her. And she helps me with all of that sort of customer service side of things. So I don't have to really do that, but it's really only probably about 20 or 30 minutes a day at the most. The rest of the business is very little on the AdWords because that's sort of all been dialed in. And the same with the PPC on Amazon sponsored ads and sponsored brands. There's really not that much that I honestly do, probably an hour a day, and that's pushing it. And there'd be some days I wouldn't do anything at all. There's very little sort of customer inquiries that come through from Amazon itself through Amazon's messaging service, and maybe just checking on inventory from time to time, particularly as we start to run down. So I just want to try and make sure that we're not going to run out as best I can. Don't always get that right, like most Amazon sellers. So there's not much to do.
Okay. What sort of skills or requirements are there for someone not familiar with the niche or business model?
I think having a bit of AdWords experience would be helpful, and certainly understanding an Amazon seller central account and the ins and outs of how to navigate your way through all of that and find inventory and look at PPC and that sort of thing. They're probably the main kind of requirements, I'd say.
How much support are you offering buyers?
I'm certainly happy to offer 30 days after the sale, probably extend it out to 60 days if they need it. I don't expect they will. I'll certainly be introducing to my fantastic supplier who's based in Guangzhou. That's Linda, and she's got amazing English and she's really awesome. So I've been using her since 2015 and her company, and she does a really good job with quality control. She used to be a quality control QC expert, and so she's also helps me with product development as well. And she has some really good contacts in China as well. One of the guys that I've used in the past, a guy called Martin, who's from Holland, I think. So he's helped with sort of, designs of new ideas and products too. And then they work together to actually bring those products to life. And so there's just a really solid team over there. So in terms of support, absolutely. So let's split it in half and make it 45 days.
Okay. It's great to hear that you've already got that solid team in place. I'm sure that's something that is music to all ears of buyers. So it's a good thing. Well, a couple roundup questions here. Would you commit to a non-compete?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, goes without saying. Yep.
And are you open to negotiating something like an earnout?
Yeah, potentially. Absolutely. Depends on what's on the table, but yeah.
Okay. And just a few kind of personal questions here.
Mm-hmm.
What drove you and motivated you while having this business?
Well, it's just a thrill of creating something and inventing something of your own and then seeing it all the way through to commercialization. So I think a lot of people get ideas for products, but they never actually see them through to a commercial stage. There's countless Kickstarter projects, I think, that have raised quite a lot of money on Kickstarter, but have never made it through to commercial stage. So I'm quite proud of the fact that these products have been able to be, from an idea right through to selling globally through the website, selling globally through Amazon. So that's sort of the thing that has been getting me out of bed for this business. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's powerful. I really like that answer. Well, I think you and I have spoken about this before. Maybe I'm making this up. I thought you've mentioned communities that you've worked with in the past. So I'm curious, what communities or groups have helped you while running your business?
So many, it's hard to count. So I've actually created my own community called the
Okay.
Australian Seller, which is an Australian Facebook group. Feel free to join that if you're listening. You can learn more about me. And then lots of podcasts as well. So, I listen to religiously the Serious Sellers podcast from Helium 10, and I create my own podcast as well. So, there's just, there's Danny McMillan, of course, with Seller Sessions is a super important podcast. So there's really just staying up to date with the latest and greatest of what's been going on with Amazon, and then, jumping into lots of Facebook groups to ask questions if you get a bit stuck about something. So they're sort of the main communities that I tend to stick to and get advice from when it comes to selling on Amazon, because the policies are changing all the time, whether it's reviews or, just whatever Amazon throws at us in terms of, policies for sellers. It's important to stay on top of those and understand what they might mean.
Yeah, and definitely have that support network as you're navigating all those changes for sure. Well, putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why do you think this is a business worth buying?
Well, it's just a really solid little business and it's multi-channel, which means that the risk is reduced. You haven't got all of your eggs in one basket. So even if Amazon United States shut down or there was some issue with that marketplace for whatever reason, then the Europe would be able to pick up the slack, as does the e-commerce as well. And so, for example, like e-commerce is out, but the rest of the world is still selling through the Amazon marketplaces. So having that diversity of channel is super important, and that's one of the sort of defensible positions that the business enjoys, in my opinion. The e-commerce side of things and Amazon kind of side of things are quite easy sides, parts of the business to run. And, it's not a complicated business to manage. So they're sort of the main reasons why I think this is a really good business to invest in.
Well, I can't top that. So I think I'm good from there. I think that's a great answer, unless you have anything else you'd like to share about the business.
No, I reckon that sort of sums up where the business is at right now and why it's where it's at. And I've tried to be as honest and as truthful as I am and as I can be. And so it just needs a little bit of extra capital and someone who, potentially shares the same sort of vision as me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've certainly enjoyed having you on here today. You've been great to talk to. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how everything plays out for you.
Me too. Good on you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, of course. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To check out more details on this business or place a deposit, visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 46567. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. By placing a deposit, you'll be given everything you need to know about the business and you can start your due diligence from there. Until next time.